Operation Epic Fury conducted more than 10,000 sorties and struck over 13,000 targets across Iran in 38 days. 1,450 of those strikes hit weapons manufacturing facilities specifically. Admiral Brad Cooper told the Senate Armed Services Committee that Iran's defense industrial base was degraded by 85 to 90%. Defense Secretary Hegseth said, "We owned their skies." And on May 7th, Iran fired missiles at 3 of our destroyers in the Strait of Hormuz. Every American watching that headline asked the same question: how? If we destroyed 90% of their military production, how is Iran still launching missiles at our ships? The answer is an engineering distinction that most people have never had to think about before. Destroying a factory is not the same as emptying every weapon that factory already produced. And understanding the difference between those two things tells you everything about why this war works the way it does. Iran's ballistic missile program was not designed for a conventional war. It was designed specifically for the scenario we just executed against it. For 2 decades, Iranian military planners built their arsenal around a doctrine called second strike capacity, the deliberate accumulation of weapons in sufficient quantity that even after absorbing a massive first strike, destroying a large fraction of the inventory, enough missiles remain to execute meaningful retaliation. This doctrine required 2 engineering components working together. First, build as many missiles as possible. Second, store them in locations separate from and harder to reach than the factories that built them. Dispersed underground bunkers, mountain tunnels with reinforced concrete entrances, pre-surveyed mobile launcher positions across hundreds of square miles of Zagros mountain terrain. Iran spent 40 years executing this strategy. When Operation Epic Fury began on February 28, our strikes destroyed the factories, the production lines, the planetary mixers that blend solid rocket propellant, the assembly facilities, and the supply chains that fed them. What our strikes could not fully address in 38 days was the inventory that had already left those factories and been dispersed across hundreds of hardened positions before the first bomb fell. Here is the engineering math that explains the remaining capability. Iran entered the conflict with an estimated 2,500 ballistic missiles. By day 7 of Epic Fury, Iran's launch rate had fallen 90%, driven by our counter-TEL campaign hunting mobile transporter erector launchers before they could complete their firing cycles. That campaign was extraordinarily effective, but suppressing launch rate is different from eliminating launch capability entirely. The missiles that survived did so because they were pre-positioned in locations our intelligence had not fully mapped, in tunnels our strikes had not reached, on mobile launchers that drove away before we found them. Those weapons do not require a functioning factory to fire. They only require a surviving launcher and a crew. Iran retains what Admiral Cooper described as nuisance capability, harassment, low-end drone attacks, residual missile launches. That is not a contradiction of our success. It is the mathematical remainder of a doctrine specifically engineered to survive exactly the campaign we conducted.